Welcome back to another episode of the All Takes No Whiffs podcast. We got another great episode for y'all this week, and I'm really looking forward to it. But before we get started, make sure that y'all turn on notifications, like, and subscribe to this video if you like it. And also, if you want, you can follow us on any social media platform at ATNW Podcast. But to get things started this week, we're going to be talking about the Julio Rodriguez contract that happened this weekend and kind of all the crazy things that are around it and how it can get up to so high. We're also going to be talking about our World Series contenders and who we think is going to be making the World Series this year. And then for boxing, we're going to be recapping the Pedraza Commey fight, also recapping Jared Anderson and his dominant knockout victory. And we're also going to be previewing Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. This is going to be another good episode, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out this Julio Rodriguez contract, so I'm kind of looking forward to talking about it. And good weekend of boxing ahead of us. Let's go. We are now in the last full month of the MLB regular season, and there's already quite a bit of things to talk about. And I hate to start this with a question, but it's just out of how confused I am, Alex. You've got some more of the details, and even you are confused. But can you explain this Julio Rodriguez contract a little?
Yeah, so I have everything pulled up in front of me, and I'm still confused after
Yeah,
looking everything. But Julio Rodriguez has signed a 12-year, $209.3 million contract that could reach up to $470 million, which would be the largest contract in sports history. But the confusing thing about this is that the base salary on this, or the base contract, is only 7 years, $119.3 million. Um, there's a $90 million option that he could opt into. I really don't know how this works, but from how it could get up to 470 million or whatever, there's a bunch of incentives that if he wins MVP, Silver Slugger, all these type of things, that's not that much. But the real kicker to it is if he gets MVP votes, wins MVP. If he does something along those lines, get some votes throughout the next 8 years, his contract will just increase. It'll always stay at 8 years unless he wins 2 MVPs. I don't really see that happening, so I doubt it'll get to that 10-year mark for it. But I mean, this contract is one of the most confusing contracts I've ever seen.
While as confusing as it is, all I'm gonna say from what I can guess, this is a really smart contract for Seattle. Just like leaving themselves a lot of room to work with if Julio pans out to be a top five, top three player in the league. He's gonna get his bag. And if, he still ends up solid, but not what we're projecting right now, they're not gonna overpay straight up. And I think that's pretty good for them. At the same time, really good for Julio too. He got the bag as long as he does his thing.
Yeah, and I mean, Julio Rodriguez may be the AL Rookie of the Year. I mean, definitely is been one of the best players for Seattle this entire year. Um, I was honestly super surprised to see him get a contract so early. I love that teams are doing this now. They're signing their superstars early and getting them out of the way, getting that contract locked up. So I'm just really excited to see all these young superstars be locked up in one place for a long time.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see, and it definitely makes a lot more sense giving these big contracts to guys of this age, unlike what we've seen in the past. I'm not calling out my boy Pujols because he got the bag from the Angels, but giving a guy north of 30, 10 years, at least 200 million, that just doesn't seem ideal, and we've seen why. So, if you're gonna lock, potential, that's the difference though. It's like people who got contracts like that, they got paid off what they've done already, and these guys are getting these contracts just off their projections. So there is risk in it too. I'm not saying the contract's ruined, but Fernando Tatis Jr. We saw, he got the bag, and I wouldn't say things are smooth sailing for him in San Diego right now. So I'm not. I'm still like kind of up in the air. Not saying I don't think players should get the big contracts. I love seeing them get paid. They've worked hard all their lives, but it does suck to see it when, like a big contract bombs for a team.
Yeah, but that's just the risk in it too. I
Mhm.
mean, it's risk and reward. I mean, Julio Rodriguez may not pan out at all. He could have one good season and it be his rookie season. We really don't know. I mean, look at Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. Yeah, I know he didn't sign a massive deal. It was 10 years, 100 million. But I mean, this knee injury is not good. I read yesterday that he said his knee feels terrible. That's the quote. His knee feels terrible. So he may not be the same player the rest of his career. We may never know. Hopefully, he can get some time and rest this offseason. But I'm expecting a long postseason run. So I hope he just doesn't injure that anymore. And that's the risk with some of these deals. Some of these players may get hurt at some point, but we just we don't hope for that at all.
Yeah, of course. And I know you said you don't think Julio's really gonna go down the 2 MVP route at least. I think that's his ceiling. Like I can see it, but I, uh, you said it in that 8 year stretch that is kind of tough. He in 8 years he's only entering his prime. You get what I'm saying? So like I don't know. That is when you put it like that, that's definitely tough.
Well, if you think about it, the next 8 years too. I mean, who's in the AL still? There's this guy named Mike Trout.
Mm,
There's this guy named Shohei Ohtani. The guy who's going to win it this year, Aaron Judge,
yeah.
Jose Ramirez. I mean, all these guys. No offense to Julio Rodriguez, all these guys are better than him. I mean, this is Julio Rodriguez. He's one of the best rookies right now, but he still hasn't, in my eyes, given up or gotten up to superstar level. And once he gets there, I'll start giving him a little more respect for the MVP. But I mean, all those guys I just named, I mean, those dudes have been doing it for years.
You're for sure right about that. He's not even close to the superstar level. My that image might be painted for some people. With that home run derby performance, him being an all star his rookie season, which he deserves credit for. But that's just part of the steps towards becoming a superstar. That's not just going to shoot him up there yet. Uh, Most people who, if they want to be talked about as superstars, once they get into that conversation, they're already like top three in MVP voting, maybe for a year or two. So he's got a lot of time for sure. And like I said earlier, luckily this contract works out for both ends, in my opinion, from what I know, because all the details are still crazy.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, this is a really, really smart contract for Seattle. If he does turn out to be a superstar, they paid him superstar money. If he just turns out to be not your average player, but your above average players, they still paid him right. So I mean, in the end, both sides I think did the right thing here. And there's also a full no trade clause on this. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but
You
there is
did.
a full no trade clause.
I mean, I doubt Seattle's going to blow it up within a minimum of 8 years. That'd be wild, but I doubt that's going to happen. So I, Julio's going to be there for a long time, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's going to max out like to the max potential. I could see it, but I can see at least Julio there's at least for the next decade. Yeah, so it's really nice to see the move that Seattle made to secure Julio. But to get onto the serious teams for this year, no disrespect, we're going to be giving our thoughts on who we think are the top contenders for the postseason and potentially the World Series. And we're going to give you our two teams who we think are going to match up. Really looking forward to this because, both of our teams could be in the mix.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this too. And um, to be honest, really, in my eyes, in my opinion, there are only 5 teams who are legit contenders right now. There could be 6 if one had some better pitching. But I think that lack of pitching is really that's going to hurt them, and we get into that later. But there's 2 teams in the American League who I think are clear-cut favorites right now. I think everyone does, and it's the Houston Astros and Christian's New York Yankees. Those 2 teams right now, Probably, I wouldn't say are playing the best baseball because the Yankees have not been doing very well lately. But Houston, and the Yankees, both of them, uh, just complete rosters. They have pitching, they have hitting, they have defense, and they have a bullpen. I would say the Yankees lack more in defense, but that's about it. Uh, these two teams are complete.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It pains me to say I've got the Yankees and the Astros as well, but I got to give the edge to Houston until I see the Yankees overcome that bump. So I would say it's probably like 60-40. Still, those two teams, and then it's just everybody else in the American League. But as far as the National League teams, I know you said there's three, and I 100% agree as well. My only thing is it's kind of tough with the Mets. You get what I'm saying? They're nasty this year, but I kind of got to look at it the same way as the Yankees. I got to see them. I got to see them overcome that hump that they've been going through for the past couple of years. Just they had a crazy lack of offense in the regular season, and it's here this year. But who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs? They might fold. They might rise to the occasion. I don't know. So if I were to have to say of those three teams, I would say I'm kind of hesitant on the Mets the most.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you that too. I mean, obviously we know what the Dodgers are. Probably the best team in baseball, to be honest. The Braves won it last year. Look like a even better roster this year without Freddie. But if like you were talking about with the Mets, I think they have gotten over one of those humps and they didn't fall off like horribly like they usually do in the second half. So that's one step. And I was looking at the Mets schedule for the rest of the year, and it's a freaking joke. They got the Athletics, they got the Washington Nationals, then they play three with us, which could decide the division since it's since it's 3 games right now. And then they end with I think the Marlins or something. I mean, they're the rest of their schedule is a complete joke. So if I'm going to be honest right now, I think the Mets will have the division locked up, which will help them tremendously because they will not have to play in that first round of the wild card, which will suck that my Braves will have to be playing in that. But I think it might be a little better off to keep playing and not have to wait in a series and not have to be a little rusty because they are the Mets still. We don't know what's going to happen.
I just want to ask real quick, how much tougher is your guys' schedule compared to the Mets? Because that sounds like cake outside of the series, that matchup between you two.
It's not too easy. We have, I think we finish off with the Rockies tonight. And then we play, I know the Mets. We have a pretty decent schedule the rest of the way. I know we end with the Marlins for 3 games, which is much needed. Hopefully, we won't face Sandy Alcantara because that would not be good. But yeah, they just have a much, much easier schedule than us the rest of the way. They're already up 3 games. I don't think they're playing tonight either, so we can gain half a game on them if we win. But Mets are looking like they're going to be locking up the division, and I'm looking like the Braves are going to be having that top wild card spot.
Which, that kind of was projected for a while. The Mets, I'm going to give them the full credit. They're 100% legit this regular season so far. So I would have to agree. I think it's going to be close up until the end, but I do think they're going to get that that division spot. So with that in mind, it's definitely going to be tougher for the Braves, but on paper, those rosters really match up, in my opinion, with the Braves kind of having a slight advantage. Like you mentioned earlier, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s health, it's going to be a pretty big factor for sure.
Yeah, and I think they'll manage that pretty decent around down the stretch, and I'm not too worried about that. I'm just more worried about that second round in the playoffs after if we can get past the first, because more than likely it's going to be the Dodgers, and having a Braves Dodgers NLDS will be pretty epic. But now that we've kind of talked about who we think is going to be contending for the World Series, who is your World Series matchup?
I don't want to hurt your feelings, my boy, but honestly, I do think the Dodgers are going to come out of the National League. It's just they've been playing crazy this season. There's always room for them to choke. The Dodgers have done that. We've seen it, but it's almost like this year compared to other years. Like it just feels like this is theirs to lose in a way. They just got the roster for that. They just pick up the players for that. That's straight up what it feels like. So I think the Dodgers out of the NL, and I think my Yankees are going to get over that hump. Maybe I might be being a little too optimistic right now, but I want to see it. So I'm going to speak it into existence. Yeah. Yankees, Dodgers. Even though a Yankees Braves would be ideal for me because I could potentially pull up to a game.
No, I would too. I definitely would want to do that, but I like that. Dodgers definitely are the best team in baseball right now. They're going to be getting Kershaw back here soon, so that's a big plus. Don't have Walker Buehler for the rest of the year. That's a big blow, but when they got Tyler Anderson, Tony Gonsolin, and Julio Rodriguez pitching like they have been all year, they'll be pretty good. But Gonsolin is hurt right now too. I did forget about that, so that is a little hurtful to them. But my World Series pick for this year would probably be a rematch of last year's. Yeah, I think it's going to be Houston, and I think it's going to be Atlanta again. Houston, honestly, other than the Dodgers, maybe the most complete team in baseball. They're lacking a couple places. If Justin Verlander can't come back like he's been pitching all year, that's going to be really hurtful to their team. But they got this guy named Framber Valdez, and he may be the best lefty in baseball right now because this dude is absolutely shoving it. He has 22 straight quality starts, which is an MLB record for a left-handed pitcher, which is just absolutely insane. And then you got my Braves. I mean, what more can I say about them? Been talking about them all year. I've been saying that I think that they're better than last year's team, and they're kind of proving it. I mean, we're 29 games above 500 right now. We finished last season 15 games above 500. So it just kind of shows you how much more consistent we've been this year, and the pitching has been a whole lot better. But back into that bullpen has been kind of scary lately with Minter blowing a eighth inning, and then Kinley looked horrible Saturday
Oh,
night
yeah,
against the
I watched
Cardinals.
that.
He looked like he was overthrowing, and it looked terrible. But
He couldn't hit a corner down at all. I was watching
he
that. That was bad.
he looked like he was overthrowing. I haven't seen him like that in a long time, but it was weird. And then last night he gives up a 2-run home run in the ninth inning. I mean, we still won, but back into the bullpen needs to start picking it up. It's the same thing every year, though, the past 3 years.
I will say this. I'd obviously be pissed if Houston was in the World Series because that means the Yankees aren't in the World Series. But Jeremy Pena in the World Series. I'm ready to see the legend start this postseason. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty cool. I mean, you may be able to go see him too, play a game. That would be pretty cool.
All right, so now that you bring that up, either way, if the Braves make the World Series, I got to pull up to a game. Unless it's like they're playing Seattle or some shit. Seattle somehow sneaks in or something, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Nah, Seattle will be lucky to get past the wild card division round, whatever it's
Yeah.
called now.
But that's our predictions on this postseason and the World Series. I can't wait for that. It's going to come a lot sooner than we're expecting, even though it feels like, we still got this. Not that it feels like it's a long time away. There's so much to look forward to in this last stretch with the races, players trying to reach milestones. I just really can't wait for this last month of the season. Pools to 700. That's going to happen this year. Let's go. This stretch of boxing from last weekend to this weekend, it's an interesting one. You got like a good amount of names, not really anybody that you're thinking is going to be, top of their division, but solid matchups because, in my opinion, Pedraza and Commey, that was a real solid fight, real solid matchup going into it because I don't want to call them gatekeepers, but they kind of are. But when you got two gatekeepers matching up against each other, they make for interesting bouts usually, and this one was pretty interesting. I was not expecting Richard Commey to look this good after his past couple performances, and I was expecting Pedraza to box his head off, but that was not really the case. And before I get into my opinion on the result of the fight, what did you think, Alex?
I think the split decision was the right call. This was a pretty even fight throughout most of the fight. Richard Commey was definitely the more aggressive fighter. Pedraza kind of disappointed me a little bit with how he came out. Wasn't not saying he wasn't trying, but just I don't know what the hell he was doing. But Comey honestly looked just a lot better than I expected, to be honest. I expected him to be kind of washed up. I expected Pedraza, like you said, to box his head off. But that just wasn't the case. And I think the split decision was definitely the right call. The 93-97, don't know how that was called, but 95-95, 96-94, I'm okay with those two. Either one.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and it's not like it was. Even though Comey did look better than expected and Pedraza not as good as I would expect, um, it's not like one person dominated the other. It was still just kind of like a mix up of pretty back and forth, and I think a draw is fair as well. I'm not going to complain because, like I said, it's not like these two guys are, you know, really in line for a title shot. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean the split decision definitely the right call. Like you said, two gatekeepers. Not really sure where both of these guys are going towards next, but next guy, I do know where he's going, and he's going up. Jared Anderson defeated Milgian Rovcanin by knockout in the second round. I mean, last week I said that this dude needed to prove himself to kind of get me more solidified for him. He did everything he needed to do. I know it was only 2 rounds, but I mean, he fought from southpaw, he fought orthodox, and the dude just has some raw power that I don't think anyone wants to get hit by.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I had the same opinion of Jared Anderson going into it too. A lot of potential. Just a few things that he needed to, clean up. And I'm gonna be honest, looked good. I need more than not even 2 full rounds to really solidify that. But I think that this is you know, a huge statement for him in that I think he's ready for the next step. Not saying world title shot right now. That's wild, but a step up in competition for sure. I'm gonna be honest. I think he washes that Hergovich guy, uh, especially with how he looked. So I think if Jared Anderson could get something like that under his belt, he would be en route to a title shot sooner. And a name like Hergovich or somebody at that level, that'd be solid. I don't want to sound too crazy right now. I think he puts up a good scrap up against the guy we're about to talk about, Andy Ruiz. Honestly, I think his youth might, take the edge right there, but Ruiz's experience that would be his advantage. But I'm pretty high on Jared Anderson. I think he is a really solid. I don't even want to call him prospect anymore, but in between prospect and contender, whatever that is.
Yeah, and before we get into the Andy Ruiz stuff, I mean, like you said, this dude has proven himself to where he can get better fights now. Philip Hergovich is actually one of the guys he called out after the fight. I would love to see this. I think Hergovich would probably take this a little more serious, I would hope, than his last
Well,
fight. Because if he doesn't, he'll definitely get his ass knocked out. I mean, he probably will anyway, to be honest. Anderson hasn't finished the fight yet. He's 12-0 with 12 knockouts now. But this is a dude I'm really high on now. I'm really looking forward to see where he's going, and he could be fighting at the end of this year. They said he could be fighting in December. I would love to see him if he does. But we got another great card coming up this weekend. I wouldn't say great card, decent card, but the main event is going to be a pretty good fight. We got Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Luis Ortiz. It's going to be a 12-round WBC heavyweight title eliminator fight. Um, Andy Ruiz, he's kind of one of those. I wouldn't really say. I mean, he is a contender, but he's not really. If you really know what I'm saying, because I think that one fight against Joshua was kind of luck.
Mm-hmm.
I think he just had one punch that was perfect and it landed, and then we saw what happened the next fight. Joshua looked like he should have been, but this is going to make for an interesting fight. Luis Ortiz, 43 years old, kind of older, so this is really both of these guys' last chance at another title.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely of the same opinion as Andy Ruiz as you because it was luck, and now his name is just in the mix. I'm not too high on him, but I'll give him his credit. He's got solid hands and he throws combinations well, but he has a lot of flaws. His shape being one of them. With all due respect, I do think if he's gonna get in there with guys bigger than him, like Luis Ortiz, he's gonna have to move well, especially for a short guy. And I don't think he has moved well enough, especially in his last fight. I don't think he looked that good. But this is a really interesting matchup because as old as Luis Ortiz is, I'm pretty sure he's fought Muhammad Ali at one point in sparring. But Luis Ortiz stylistically he can be hell for Andy Ruiz. I feel like he could definitely box his head off. I'm not saying he's completely traditional Cuban style, but he's got that in the mix. And I can really envision Andy Ruiz kind of having a hard time with him for sure. And Ruiz, like I said, he throws in combinations well. He doesn't really have that one punch knockout power, unless it's like a perfect placed one, like you mentioned against AJ, which really threw him off. Luis Ortiz, there's a reason he's only lost to Deontay Wilder because he can box really well. And unless you could shut the lights off like that, I think you're going to have a real problem against him, even though he's 1,004,000 years old.
Yeah, and I was reading that Luis Ortiz is actually preparing for this fight to go all 12 rounds. He thinks for him the best way to win is for it to go all 12, for him to box, not to try and knock him out, just wear him down. And I think that's what he needs to do to win, honestly. I don't think Andy Ruiz can last all 12 rounds and win the fight.
Hmm.
I think he's going to have to knock Luis Ortiz out to win the fight, which he is fully capable of doing. But I'm just kind of curious. How do you think this is going to end? Who do you think wins?
To be honest with you, I really think Luis Ortiz is going to get that decision. Um, Not everybody gets, too bad with age. As tough as it was to watch Luis Ortiz's last fight, I would say a big part of it was that his opponent was Charles Martin. If you guys don't know about him, there's not really much to look up, so you're chilling. But stylistically, Luis Ortiz, he is a really solid boxer, and I think his height and reach advantage as well. That's going to play a factor to keeping Ruiz off of him. I just don't see Ruiz getting inside on him, to be honest with you, unless his legs are fresher than I'm expecting. I don't think he has the bounce for that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I agree with you 100%. I think this is going to be a Luis Ortiz decision. He's going to win by decision. I just think that him trying to go all 12 rounds, I do not think Andy Ruiz will last, like I just said earlier. It's going to be a long fight. It's going to be a lot of beat down. It's going to be a lot of body shots. I just don't see Andy Ruiz winning if this fight goes all 12, and Luis Ortiz is probably going to win this by a decision if it goes that far.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. This fight is super important for both guys as to what their next step is. Andy Ruiz Jr., I think he has a better chance of getting a solid title shot after this than Luis Ortiz. But I really see it more likely that Luis Ortiz pulls off an upset, if you want to say it, if we're going off names. But we know. I'm looking forward to this fight this weekend for sure. Definitely a solid scrap. And another fighter I just want to mention real quick, Juan Francisco Estrada. He fights this weekend, defending his bantamweight title. Just want to mention him real quick because while this is definitely a tune-up fight, in my opinion, he's in the mix with a few solid names down in those lighter weight classes. He could potentially have another rematch with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, one of the best fighters of this generation, to be honest. And those scraps between those two, crazy. Like one of them, fight of the year worthy fight. And I definitely recommend watching the fight or, keeping up with what's happening because he's potentially in the mix for one of the best fights of, I would probably say, early 2023.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. And if you want, that fight's going to be on DAZN, so you can check it out on DAZN. So I'm really looking forward to the fighting card this weekend. I know that the next 2 to 3 weekends, though, we have a banger of some fights coming up. So I'm looking forward to this month of September of fighting. Really, the next 3 months, to be honest. We have a lot of great fights coming up, but I'm looking forward to this Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz fight, and it's going to be a good one.
Canelo Triple G3 this month. Let's go. It's coming.
And that does it for another episode of the All It Takes No Whiffs podcast. It's just another great episode this week. Julio Rodriguez contract, it's still a puzzle to me. I have no idea what the hell is going on with it. Still probably won't in the next 5 or 6 years, but I really enjoyed talking about the rest of the season, really, because we are going to have great playoffs coming up. We got some races coming down to the wire too, and got another great boxing card this weekend, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I personally cannot wait for the rest of the season to play out, as well as these fights coming up. If you guys want, you guys can leave a comment on our YouTube. Let us know who you think the contenders are for the World Series, or let us know who you think is going to win between Andy Ruiz and Luis Ortiz. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. And if you guys want, you can find us on most social media platforms at ATNW Podcast. You could also find my personal Twitter and Instagram if you want at Christian_S52.
You can also find mine at ahandy2215. And also, one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is we are on TikTok now too. We're posting short clips from our episodes and really anything that we like. We'll be getting some bloopers in there eventually from our episodes. So if you want, you can also follow us there. It's the same thing, ATNW Podcast.
Just know that the takes that we're going to be posting on TikTok, no whiffs, fire only.
Straight fire. But that does it for us. Another great episode. I'm looking forward to talking about some women's fights next weekend. We got 3 great women title fight next weekend that are going to be absolutely crazy. Clarissa Shields, the top women's pound-for-pound fighter, is fighting, and that's going to be a spicy matchup because the girls she's fighting, they do not like each other. But I'm looking forward to talking about that next weekend, and until then, peace.
Peace. Go Yankees.